Hey everyone, it's Sevy and I'm back with another Ayato video. In reviewing Ayato, I've been mentioning how he has several weapons available to him aside from the new Haran, making him pretty flexible in terms of building. So now in this video, I'm going to put some of those swords to the test with a damage test and discussion of their pros and cons. First of all, let me discuss testing notes and very important disclaimers. The weapons we are comparing are the Haran, Primordial Jade Cutter, and Mistsplitter Reforged for his best 5 stars, plus the Battle Pass reward Black Sword and the 4-star free-to-play option Amenoma Kageuchi. I can predict that these are going to be very popular picks for him. However, there are other viable weapons I am not including simply because I do not have the resources to do practical tests on them. But just because I don't include them doesn't mean they are bad. Additionally, the Ayato build I used is a highly invested 4-piece Gladiators Finale set. I chose this build throughout the test since I have really good pieces and it's a very accessible set. But we know that the 4-piece Echoes and 4-piece Heart of Depth are his other most popular build options. Changing artifact sets and assuming their stats are comparable will yield some shifting in the damage output too due to different set bonuses, which is more complicated to demonstrate and is best displayed by maths instead. So take my results more as approximations of damage potential comparison. Given these, I'm sharing a theory-crafted spreadsheet from Ayato Main's Theory Crafters in the pinned comment, which takes into account different artifact sets too when comparing weapons and includes theoretical calculations for weapons I don't have. So do keep in mind the scope of this video. So to simulate ideal crit ratios and values, for each weapon I made a 4-piece Gladiators build that got as close as possible to a high 1:2 crit ratio, then took that total crit value and rebalanced it to an exact 1:2 ratio with the same crit value. A 1:2 crit ratio will result in the highest total damage, which is one thing we'll also compare between weapons, not just damage per screenshot. Finally, Ayato's talents are at 198, there is no active resonance at play, and no other external buffs from teammates in these tests. This will simply showcase Ayato's raw damage on these weapons. With those in mind, let's get into the discussion and tests. Let's start with the Haran, the supposed best in slot and signature weapon. Here is the clip with the passive activated before switching. The damage numbers compiled are for his skill's normal attacks and burst. You can see it really boosts his on-field DPS playstyle. Maximizing it requires getting the full stacks every time before using his skill, which should be very easy to do for Ayato's team rotations. So how close or far will the other weapons be to his signature weapon? Let's see. Next up is the Primordial Jade Cutter. It yields a higher crit rate stat than the Haran, so I'll do some rebalancing to yield a fairer comparison. This Jade Cutter is also at R2, so the actual damage should be reduced by around 2 to 3% for R1. As we can see, its total damage surpasses the Haran thanks to its higher crit value and the higher burst damage. It's the most convenient 5-star I think, just because it's easy to plug and play. You don't have to worry about stacking mechanics or the like. Despite its low base attack, it makes up for it with the added attack and the opportunity to stack more crit damage. Plus, this weapon synergizes well with Ayato's additional HP scaling mechanic. Finally, the Jade Cutter has found its best users so far. If you have one, I think there's very little reason to pull for the Haran. The only time this becomes detrimental is when using Ayato on a Blizzard Strayer set, since that's too much crit rate stacking already, but that's a very niche build anyway. Now we have the Mistsplitter Reforged, which came out with the other Kamisato sibling. Here's the clip first, and the damage numbers I'll show reflect the balanced crit stats already. The Mistsplitter has a higher base attack than the weapons we previously showed, but it does have a lower crit value of 44.1% crit damage. Its passive also gives a 12% elemental damage bonus on R1, and the additional elemental damage bonuses also operate on a stacking basis, which you want to maintain as much as possible. You will likely be able to maintain at least 2 stacks most of the time. Upon casting Ayato's burst, if I'm not mistaken, he triggers second and third conditions, then snapshots the damage damage bonus after the burst animation. And if your sequence is using his burst than his skill, then all the stacks will be in effect during his skill state, which is what I did. The ideal scenario for getting all stacks is that your Ayato should have ample ER to burst every rotation too. Even if that means sacrificing a bit of offensive stats to build enough ER, it might be worth doing so. Since it's a crit damage weapon, you just want to make sure Ayato either has adequate crit rate first or play this in a permafreeze team. It's still a generally good 5-star option and goes toe-to-toe with the previous two. Looking at the 5-star swords, our computed total damage puts Haran at a disadvantage, but this is because Mistsplitter and Jade Cutter deliver more burst damage than the Haran does. If your Ayato does 2 E sequences or more for every burst, however, the Haran comes closer, and on the Echo's artifact should pull ahead. Now that we're done with the 5 stars, let's go with the 4-star contenders, starting with the Battle Pass weapon, the Black Sword. Here's the clip and the adjusted damage. So we can see that there's a noticeable damage difference versus the 5 stars, which shouldn't be a surprise. This Black Sword is at R2, so there's some room for improvement with refinements, albeit very incremental. The base attack and crit rate are quite lower, and the damage bonus passive is just decent. One benefit though is its healing passive, which can be helpful for teams without good healers. However, among 4 stars, it's one of the best you can give to Ayato even on R1. The other 4-star that can come close to this is the Lion's Roar, assuming you're comparing them on a taser team at equal refinements. At least the Black Sword will work well on any team comp. Finally, the free-to-play weapon Amenoma Kageuchi. This is the only sword in this comparison video that doesn't have a crit substat, which predictably results in its damage values being the lowest among them, as you can see here. The main contribution that Amenoma gives to Ayato is its energy refunding mechanic. However, with Ayato, in usual rotations he will only be able to generate at most 2 succession seeds before casting his burst. On R1, this refunds 12 energy total, and on R5, 24 energy. On high refinements, that's still a significant energy refund for Ayato's 80 cost burst. You can work with this in 2 ways. Either 1, you get more comfortable burst uptime alongside whatever ER substats you have, making your rotation smoother, or 2, you can allocate less ER substats and target more crit stats that the weapon is lacking. Among the free-to-play craftable weapons, Amenoma is simply the best option for him due to both its passive and the fact that its competitors, the Prototype Rancor and Iron Sting, don't synergize as well with Ayato's kit. Also, in my opinion, it's Ayato's best weapon in terms of fashion. It actually looks so clean, like it was made for him. If you're an Amenoma user, you may not win in damage, but you'll win in fashion. So this is my practical tests and discussion of what these weapons can offer. Again, there's still other viable swords out there, and if I missed discussing a specific weapon you're curious about, I do encourage you to take a look at the spreadsheet I linked if you want a more comprehensive math comparison of the weapons and artifact sets. That's going to be all for this video, everyone. I would love to know in the comments what weapon you've given your dear Kamisato Ayato. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already for more Genshin Impact guides and content, and I will see you all soon. Take care!